As games continue to get progressively larger and more elaborate, the desire for more compact, linear experiences continues to grow in gaming audiences. Thankfully, there isn't much of a shortage of options on that front. If what you're looking for is an excellent linear adventure with constant forward momentum, there's plenty of amazing games from over the years to dive into, and here, we're going to talk about a few that we feel are the best of the best. And just a quick note before we begin. For the purposes of this list, we're looking exclusively at strictly linear games. If a game is open world, semi-open world, wide linear, Metroidvania, places emphasized in exploration designed around backtracking, or anything of that sort, you won't see it on this list. We know that's a pretty strict way of defining linear design in games, but the very purpose of this feature is to celebrate that. So please keep that in mind while viewing. Number 15, Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. Machine Games did an excellent job of redefining the Wolfenstein franchise with 2014's The New Order, and then took the series' new formula to even greater heights with its sequel. The biggest strengths of Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus obviously lie in its story and storytelling, and getting to witness its gleefully over-the-top cutscenes and wonderfully bizarre personalities in a story that remains captivating until the last second is an unforgettable experience. It helps, of course, that the action itself can also be a lot of fun. Number 14, A Plague Tale: Requiem. Asobo Studios might be a much smaller team than most others that tend to work on cinematic story-driven third-person action-adventure games, but currently, it's also one of the best. A Plague Tale: Requiem is recent evidence of that. It takes the simplistic yet engaging gameplay ideas of its predecessors and expands upon them just enough to give the gameplay experience greater depth, while also pulling no punches with its storytelling or production values. Number 13, Inside. Inside has been called one of the best games ever made by a great many people, and it's not hard to see why it gets that sort of praise. Though it's a fairly short game with very simplistic gameplay, it makes an unbelievably strong impression. Visually, it's an outstanding game. While with its unsettling world and its wordless storytelling, it crafts an experience that burrows its way into your brain and refuses to leave, especially with that existentially horrifying ending. Number 12, Metro: Last Light. We don't get too many single-player narrative-driven first-person shooters these days, so the value of 4A Games' Metro series can't be overstated. And though it made a successful transition to a semi-open world formula with Exodus, it's arguable that its linear style remains unmatched in several ways. Metro: Last Light, for instance, is an unforgettable game, one that stands out as one of the genre's best offerings to this day. From its incredible sense of place and atmosphere to the sheer dread that its claustrophobic design elicits, there's plenty to love about the 2013 shooter. Number 11, Half-Life 2. Of course, speaking of narrative-driven first-person shooters, we'd be remiss not to mention the granddaddy of that particular group. Half-Life 2's legacy needs no introduction to anyone who has even a passing interest in gaming, and though it's nearly 2 decades old now, it's still an incredible game to play today. Whether you're looking for a captivating and well-told story or for memorable mechanics and action, Half-Life 2 remains a benchmark that games continue to aspire to this day. Number 10, God of War 3. The God of War series has gone much wider than what it once used to be with its recent installments, and it made that transition successfully, to say the very least. But let's not forget just how good it was when it was an entirely linear action series. God of War 3 is perfect evidence of the fact that it used to be at the very top of the pile in that category. Brutal, visceral action combined with stellar production values in an experience that was brimming with epic set moments of unbelievable scope, coming together in a package that's probably still unmatched in what it managed to accomplish with its sheer sense of scale. Number 9, Donkey Kong Country: Tropical Freeze. 2D side-scrolling platformers aren't as commonly found as they once were back in the medium's early days, especially not good ones, but Donkey Kong Country: Tropical Freeze is not only one of the genre's best offerings in recent years, it's probably one of the best 2D platformers of all time, period. It's hard to think of many games that are capable of exhibiting the levels of creativity and ingenuity that a single level of Tropical Freeze does, and it's a game that does so on a consistent basis. Combine that with tight controls and mechanics, and you've got nothing short of a masterpiece. Number 8, Psychonauts 2. The wait for Psychonauts 2 was a long one, but impossible though it may have seemed to many, the game proved to be well worth all those years of anticipation. Like its predecessor, Psychonauts 2 revels in how bizarre it is, and also, like its predecessor, it doesn't do so at the cost of good storytelling or character development. Meanwhile, on the gameplay front, the game remains a joy to play through from start to finish, thanks primarily to how widely creative and imaginative it remains with the environments you keep finding yourself in. Number 7. Gears of War 3. Linear cover-based shooters were all the rage in the Xbox 360 era, but of course very few of them managed to touch the heights that the Gears of War trilogy did time and time again. Gears of War 3 in particular was the perfect culmination for the franchise, and an excellent way for Epic to sign off. Even if you were to completely ignore its addictive suite of multiplayer offerings, the game delivered an excellent campaign that was packed full of adrenaline-fueled action and some of the best third-person shooting that you'll ever find in a game, even to this day. Number 6. Halo 3. The Halo franchise's stock has fallen massively over the course of the last decade and a half, but when Halo 3 launched, it was the king of the industry. And going back to Halo 3 even today, it's easy to see why it was so fiercely loved. Its moment-to-moment combat remains unparalleled even now, and as its legions of fans will tell you, its campaign is also chock full of incredible sequences that do a wonderful job of allowing the core combat mechanics to shine that much brighter. Number 5. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves. When it comes to cinematic third-person action-adventure games, Uncharted remains the blueprint for the industry at large, and Uncharted 2 Among Thieves was responsible for putting that blueprint together, a rollercoaster ride from its first second to its last. Naughty Dog's 2009 masterpiece delivered a glut of masterfully crafted set pieces and action sequences, and delivered them with the most perfect pacing imaginable. Not often do we call games that released in the PS3, Xbox 360 era timeless, but Uncharted 2? Yeah, it certainly fits the description. Number 4. Super Mario 3D World. While a great many Super Mario fans will tell you that the series is at its best when it puts players in sandbox environments, a la Super Mario 64 or Odyssey, there's also plenty of examples of just how good the series can be when it's delivering much more linear and guided brand of platforming. Super Mario 3D World exemplifies that perfectly, combining stellar and consistently imaginative level design with tight controls and enjoyable mechanics. It makes for what's easily one of the best platformers ever made. Number 3. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Metal Gear Solid was the master of linear stealth design for a long time before it went open world for its final installment. And in that era of linear games, every single one of its installments was an unequivocal masterpiece. You could make a solid case for any one of its mainline entries for a place on this list, but we're going with Metal Gear Solid 2. Coming at a time when the series had found the perfect balance between complexity and simplicity, Sons of Liberty was an absolute sublime experience that combined great level design with some of the best stealth mechanics that we've seen in a game. Add to that its engrossing story and a string of excellent boss fights, and it's hard not to be wowed by Metal Gear Solid 2's brilliance even today. Number 2. The Last of Us Part 1. Cinematic linear games are Naughty Dog's bread and butter, so it makes sense to have a couple of the studio's very best games in this list. And sure, The Last of Us Part 2 is probably a far better game than Part 1 where the gameplay experience is concerned, but purely as a strictly linear game, the original remains a landmark release with an unmatched legacy. With a harrowing story, excellently written and acted characters, and straightforward yet engaging combat and exploration mechanics, The Last of Us is an absolute masterpiece. One where you can't even help but marvel at how expertly it's been put together, to the extent where you wonder if any other studio in the industry will ever be capable of touching the same heights. Number 1. Mass Effect 2. Whether or not BioWare will ever get back to its best is anyone's best guess at this point, but if you ever begin questioning how good the developer even was when it was at its best, just play Mass Effect 2, which is, and there's absolutely no hyperbole here, one of the greatest games ever made. Simple yet effective RPG mechanics combined with solid third-person shooting and some of the best and most effective implemented choices and consequence mechanics that you'll ever see in a game, while a wonderful and ever-expanding cast of characters keeps you invested right until the end. So, how'd we do? Did your favorite make our list? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And don't forget to drop a comment while you're here.